This is Soaring the Sky, a glider pilot's podcast, coming to you from the Mid-Atlantic region here in the United States and bringing you great soaring content from glider pilots all over the globe. We now join Chuck and our guest pilot.
Hello, Soaring community. Welcome back to the podcast. Since we're in the holiday season, we thought it would be nice to throw in some of our best throwback episodes that some of you may not have heard. One of our favorites here at the podcast is definitely a chat with Miguel Iturmendi from the Perlan Project. Miguel talks about what it's like flying at super high altitudes never reached before in a glider, and he also answered some of your questions. Miguel, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Happy to be here, Chuck.
I think it's been a little while since we talked, but before we jump into the meat of the interview, and for the benefit of listeners that may not have heard your prior appearances here on Soaring the Sky, can you please just give us a few-minute flyover of your own aviation bio and maybe also just a brief overview of the Perlan Project?
Sure. So I am a glider pilot, obviously. That's why I'm here. My day job is a experimental test pilot. So I fly test prototypes for different companies. And my involvement with the Perlan started about 8-9 years ago via Ed Warnock, their CEO, and Einar Bolson, the creator initiator of Perlan, who recently passed away just 2 weeks ago. And what I do in Perlan is I fly the Perlan with Jim Payne, and I also do engineering on it. So basically, in a nutshell, that's it.
I'm sorry to hear about that. I had heard about him just a couple weeks ago. It's sad news, but I'm sure it must have been, an honor to work with him.
Oh, absolutely. A huge honor. Einar, as a test pilot, did everything. Is one of those NASA research test pilots that flew all of the X-planes and everything out there that is interesting. And as a glider pilot, he also did everything. And of course, he flew the Perlan 1 to a world record altitude with Steve Fawcett in 2006. And he put Perlan started in the middle of the 90s, 93, 94 with him. This was his project. So everything that we've done in Perlan is because of him, his guidance, his knowledge, experience. And in the last few years, his inspiration. He was very involved with everything. Personally, he was a friend and somebody that would be greatly missed. And for me, it was a total privilege to be able to share the few years that I was able to share with him.
Absolutely. I'm sure some wonderful memories that you'll be able to hang on to.
Most definitely, yes.
From all the emails and the DMs we got, without a doubt, the biggest question on everybody's mind is, what are you guys planning for 2021, if anything? But just to keep everybody in suspense, how about we just bookmark that and we'll circle back towards it here at the end of the interview. But given that we have pilots from varying backgrounds and experience on the podcast, I don't think we should assume everybody's listening has a good understanding of wave lift. Could you spend a few minutes and describe in your own words what wave lift is, and also maybe perhaps elaborate a bit on the difference between lower level mountain waves, of course, and the higher level atmospheric waves you guys fly? Or are those higher level waves also created by the mountains way down below?
Wow, that's like a 4-tier question. I'm about to turn 50 in a couple of months, and I already forgot about the first two parts of the question. So I'll start with the most recent thing that you asked: is are those mountain waves, are the stratospheric wave created by the mountain waves? The short answer is mostly yes. So yes, 90% of those are created, in fact, by the mountain wave that keeps expanding. And then if you have a mass of air that is doing something, moving, like you have with the polar vortex in around the South Pole, the Antarctica, or of the polar vortex up here in the northern hemisphere around the Arctic, then those keep resonant up in altitude and creating that disturbance into a higher wave. So basically, those answer, I think, the last two questions. As far as how mountain wave is created, well, you need some sort of obstacle. In this case, mountains, a ridge, or some sort of a group of mountains, and you need a perpendicular wind. So let's take in United States the Sierra Mountains, right between California and Nevada. They go from just north of LA, around Mojave, Tehachapi, all the way north of Reno. So a lot of times the wind between surface or just above the surface to about 15, 20,000 feet comes from the west. And we know that's a typical pattern, right? In the United States, the wind aloft comes from the west towards the east. This is why it takes longer to fly to LA from the East Coast than to come back from the West Coast to the East Coast. And so this wind basically just runs into the mountain, and it creates a disturbance, around the mountain, and that keeps propagating upwards, until it hits the tropopause. Normally, to have mountain wave, or you will need wind that increases in magnitude. So that normally happens until you get to the tropopause, right? The wind at 10,000 feet could be, let's say, 30 knots, and the wind at 20,000 feet could be 50 knots, and at 30,000 feet it could be 70 knots, and 35,000 feet could be 100 knots or higher. But when you get to the tropopause, the winds start to decrease, and that's normally when the mountain wave stops. So the mountain wave that you will find in the United States around where you are, and just south of you, and in the Sierras is in the troposphere. So it will form between 5 and 10,000 feet, and it will go up as long as those conditions that I just described continue to exist. If you had a mass of air moving above the tropopause at faster speeds, so the same increase, the same slope that I just described between 10, 20, 30, 40,000 feet, that it will keep going, then that mountain wave will actually propagate into the stratosphere. In the world, that happens with the polar vortex. The polar vortex has higher altitude winds and higher speeds, you know, that go above the tropopause. And that's why we go to Argentina, because that's one place, that southern Argentina, that has this phenomenon.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a great answer to the question. Based on Perlan's results so far, and based on the years of research and thinking about this, what do you guys think the top altitude limit is for a glider to fly in atmospheric waves?
It's a good question. DLR, the research, the NASA of Germany, their space agency and aeronautic research agency, was in El Calafate in Argentina with us, and they had a G5 with a lidar underneath, right? This huge pod, and they were looking at this mountain wave, and they said the mountain wave goes strong well above 100,000 feet. In some cases up to 150,000 feet, which sounds like science fiction. For a glider to fly much higher than 94, 95,000 feet will have to be a transonic into supersonic wind. And that would be hard to manufacture. In Perlan, we've been talking about a Perlan 3 that will do just that, conquer the 100,000 feet mark. But for that, we will have to go well into the transonic and very close to above the speed of sound. So right now, our glider is aerodynamically could go in theory to 96,000 feet. We have put a margin of 6,000 feet to just not to push it too much, basically. But so I guess that's your answer. With a conventional, and by conventional I mean with a conventional wind that has been designed for this, I think 98, 100,000 is possible. Anything above that, even at a speed of 40 knots indicated, you'll be breaking the speed of sound.
Wow.
And of course, what the center of gravity happens over a wind, and this becomes a huge problem.
Yeah. Going back to our interview a year and a half ago or so, you had mentioned that the year was kind of a bust in terms of altitudes achieved, largely because of that historically huge 30 plus warming of certain layer of atmosphere, and breaking up of the polar vortex that summer. Can you update listeners what happened in 2020 and what is predicted for 2021 relative to the atmospheric conditions down there in Argentina?
Sure. So for 2021, I'm not sure because we talked about this in one of the last meetings we have, and we were waiting to get an update from Dr. Elizabeth Austin, our scientist meteorologist. As far as 2020 last year, something similar happened, but it wasn't as pronounced and as sharp as 2019. Um, the thing is that the only people in that part of the world that was collecting data was us. So whatever I'm telling you, I'm not 100% sure because it's not like you have people flying 50 to 100,000 feet that south near Antarctica. So because we did in 2019, we have all these very accurate measurements of what was happening on the atmosphere. On 2020, what we have is more of a model. So the model indicated that similar problems were happening, but not as sharp. How accurate that is hard to tell because nobody's flying radio sounds and balloons over there to gather these measurements.
Right, exactly. Reaching back again to our last chat, one of the topics that listeners found most fascinating was your technical explanations of stall speed, VNE, the amount of lift needed at high altitudes to actually get positive climb, and just all that. Even for pilots that maybe you're flying during the summer here in the U.S. and maybe they're getting up to 17 or 18,000 feet, they might wonder why their Varia shows 2 knots of lift, but their altimeter isn't moving too much.
Yeah, sure. The rule of thumb for any pilot is that you need one extra knot on your Vario for every 10,000 feet to create enough lift for you to maintain some sort of climb. Okay, this is a rule of thumb. The science behind it's a little more of a longer explanation than that. But if you need one and a half knot to have that 1.5 knot climb at sea level, to have that 1.5 knot at 10,000 feet, you're gonna need 2.5, and at 20,000 is gonna be 3.5 to get that 1.5, and so on. And the reason is simple. I mean, you're flying indicator airspeed, but that indicator airspeed translate to a higher true airspeed. So basically, the air is thinner. You need more speed more molecules going faster over your airfoil to maintain the required lift to do whatever it is that you need to do. In this case, we're talking about climbing, excess energy to climb. So basically, that's the reason. Thin air means that your indicator speed of 50 knots at sea level is 50 knots. 50 knots at 90,000 feet, like Perlan flies, is closer to 400 knots.
Wow, yeah. Awesome.
So for Perlan needs about 8 or 9 knots to climb,
That's crazy.
in those altitudes, just to get anything. Yeah.
And the show is proud to announce yet another new sponsor. Wings and Wheels has been serving the soaring and sport aviation community for more than 30 years now. They have the largest and most comprehensive inventory of sailplanes and soaring supplies in the U.S. Nearly everything you'll find on their site is in stock and ready for same-day shipping. They are proud to be the exclusive American representative for HPH Ltd., manufacturer of the finest quality sailplanes. The HPH Twin Shark is the newest 20-meter two-place sailplane on the market and arriving in North America this spring. Their staff has thousands of hours of flying experience in gliders and airplanes, staffed by Adam, Kelly, Julie, and Sean. A friendly voice will answer when you call. Located in Eagle, Idaho, Wings and Wheels has a new commercial building with warehouse built to their specifications and completed in 2021. Whether shipping domestic or international, your soaring-related supply list is covered. Come visit them next time you are in the Boise area. Check them out at wingsandwheels.com. And through the end of May, if you use the promo code POD2021, you'll get a free 8-inch sailplane decal with your order. We're stoked to have them on board the pod and thank them for their support. As for the glider itself, what are some of the more subtle technical details that listeners and pilots of all stripes might find unusual or interesting? For instance, Do you guys use a special type of gel coat or poly coating to deal with the extreme temperatures, or is it really just the same finish that you'd find on any regular modern glass glider?
Yeah, so really the most going back to your question of the gel coat, we don't use gel coat. Gel coat doesn't do great on high altitude. Reason is because humidity gets behind it, and then that freezes and it expands and it cracks and it breaks, and you
Okay.
don't want to lose that during the fly. The most unique part, Chuck, about the Perlan is the airfoil is designed for high altitude for low Reynolds numbers. So our glider doesn't fly really well low at altitude.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, it flies well when it's at high altitude. You know, so it's designed with that in mind. The other thing that is very unique about our glider is that it's a pressurized glider, and it's the only pressurized glider in history. There was a Canadian project in the 1980s that they tried to pressurize a glider, and I think in Wikipedia they said that it could pressurize to 2 psi differential. But talking to the people that did it, they said that they never got it to do that. So Perlan is the only pressurized glider, and then the life support system is very unique. It's very close to a spacecraft, but even for a spacecraft, is unique. So we survive inside the Perlan, creating two different atmospheres. One is the one that pressurizes your tissue, your body, which is based on dry air. So it has 21% oxygen, and it's the same air you're breathing right now. It's just being dehumidified, basically. But we don't breathe that. We breathe in a closed loop inside of a rebreather where we're breathing 95 to 99% oxygen, and whatever we exhale, that CO2 goes back into the closed loop through the mask. It doesn't go into the cabin. It gets cleaned from the CO2, and it goes back into your lungs. So we keep rebreathing the same oxygen, but it's never mixed with the air that we use to pressurize our body. Those things I think are the most unique. The way the aircraft flies is it's similar to any other glider, other than it's a lot heavier, and it's not a great aircraft to do thermals on. It's made for wave flying. It's just way too heavy to do. We catch thermals now and then with the Perlan, but that's not what it's meant to
Right.
do. It's really tiring in such a heavy controls. There's a lot of friction in the system, in the flight control system. So
Speaking of the glider, it looks like it has a main fixed gear. Doesn't that add loads of unwanted drag, or how does that work out?
yeah, so if we calculated the drag that creates, and basically it kills the L over D by like one,
Oh,
or
okay.
maybe 1.5. So instead of being 44 to 1 is 42 to 1, which is kind of what the Perlan is. The reason this is not important to us, Chuck, is because the amount of engineering we needed to make to clean that up, then you have to put the gear somewhere. And the Perlan inside is very much like a space capsule. It is full with screens and avionics. You're laying down inside, and you have these very small windows, oval windows that you look through that get completely frozen, and then you can't see anything. And we really don't have any space to put the entire wheel and retract it inside the pressurized hole. That's the main reason.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, we're going to move over to some of the listener submitted questions. And to those of you who took the time to reach out, thank you so much. We here at the pod want to do more of this community generated content in future episodes. And again, we do have a brand new tool on the website where you can leave us a recorded message and share your stories or recent flights, anything. So make sure you check that out. If you leave us a recording, chances are pretty high you're probably going to end up on the podcast. All right, so the first listener question is given how narrow the band between stall and VNE is at super high altitudes. Do you guys have an autopilot system or some such that helps keep you out of danger way up there?
No autopilot whatsoever. It flies identical to any of your gliders. And as far as how wide is the coffin corner, not very wide, but not narrow either. There's quite a bit of quite a bit of distance, something like around 6 knots. 6 knots doesn't sound like a lot, but to change a knot in a speed at that altitude takes a lot of energy. So it's quite generous. It's not like the SR-71 or even the U2 where it's super narrow. For us, we left quite a bit of margin when we designed the Perlan.
Okay, nice. What tools do you use to determine where the best areas of lift are going to be? Or do you have tools and instruments on board that help you navigate to different or new areas in real time?
Yeah, so both. The answer is both. Let's talk about the ground.
Okay.
On the ground, what we do is we send a couple of balloons each day, radio sounds, and we collect all that data and we enter it into a model. We built a model and then we run that models through some supercomputers that have been donated from Intel and other manufacturers. And we built a model when we think the lift is from the wave. That gets updated over and over and over. And then just before we fly, we basically have a map that is something like 50 miles by 50 miles. And we have waypoints, that go from north to south and they go from east to west. So they're like rows of waypoints, like 4 rows, and each of them are 7 or 8 waypoints. And then we put the image of where we think the lift is, and we go there. Can that be updated from the ground? Uh, yes and no. In some years, no. And right now, we're working on updating that through satellite. Okay. Definitely updated on the ground all the time, and then the ground will, through telemetry and through radio communications, will tell us go to Lima 5, and we know Lima 5 is whatever waypoint we have, and we go there and try that. So it's kind of interactive, from the information we already run in the cockpit and the information they're giving us from the ground. Because sometimes from the time that we take off to the time that we're hitting these waypoints, 2 3 hours have gone by, and there is an updated model.
Okay, the next listener question is, how does the glider handle? Can you compare it to something more common down here close to the Earth?
Yeah, so Chuck, let me say for your listeners that I am a relatively inexperienced glider pilot. Okay, I have roughly 350 hours, 370 hours of glider time, and I've flown about maybe 18, 20 different gliders. To me, it handles close to whatever 20 meters gliders that are out there. Something like
Okay.
and anything heavy. So like an Arcus, maybe a little bit, but heavier than that. Laterally on the ailerons, it's pretty heavy. Directionally,
Okay.
heavy, but not super heavy, but on the heavy side. And longitudinally, the pitch is not very heavy. It's not light either. It's not like a single seater 15-meter glider, but proportionally, definitely the ailerons is where you have to put that elbow grease and go like, really, really, when you're doing that, you go like, wow, this will not thermal well.
Yeah.
But the closest thing will be a 20-meter glider that weighs, you know 13 1400 pounds.
And that's a lot of work if you're up there doing all that flying. So I think we had talked a little before that you guys switch back and forth, right?
We switch controls. Most of the fly is done from the front because, quite frankly, there's almost no visibility from the back. But once that you're in the air, normally the pilot up front will fly maybe 75% of the flight, sometimes more, maybe
Okay.
80%.
Okay.
So when he needs to take a break every 20, 30 minutes, the guy on the back takes the airplane for 5 or 10 minutes. And then, in definitely the landing is almost impossible to do from the back seat.
Okay.
I would say it's mostly a safety thing. You don't want to do that unless it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah. Miguel, on a flight, say 75,000 feet, how long in the air would you typically be on a day like that?
I think there's a typical flight as far as hours, but I would say most of the flights are between 4.5 and 7 hours.
Okay. Wow.
So 5 6 hours. Compared to the flights that we do in on wave in the Sierra here in the United States, they're short flights, but they're not a short they're not 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
I would say that nothing under 4.5, and above 7, we start having issues with the battery running low.
Okay. Yeah.
Not super low, but you want to be coming down after 7 hours.
Yeah. So a follow up on that question related to being stuck in that tiny cockpit for a long time. What do you guys do with the whole urination thing? And hopefully you wouldn't have anything else to worry about when you're up there.
Yeah, I don't think you want to have Mexican food just before, and happy Cinco de Mayo to any of our Mexican listeners. So basically, we have a system. We have two systems that you can use. One, and I use both of them. I think the low tech system is my preference, which is a half gallon inside of a half gallon uh, bag,
Okay.
sandwich bag, and then you just relieve yourself there, close both of them, and put it to your side,
Yeah.
and then it will freeze.
Right.
After 20 minutes, it's a block of ice. And that's the low tech. The high tech is something that one of our sponsors gave us, which is it works incredibly well. Basically, it's a catheter with a tube and a liter motor and a half liter bag, no, actually 1 liter bag, and you put it around your on your leg, basically with like a strap, and then it senses when you want to go and it starts sucking, basically suction and brings the urine into the bag, and you just leave it until after the flight.
You guys have a lot of gear on. It's not like obviously your normal glider flight. So,
No, we have electrical clothing, 3 layers of clothing. I, we look like the Michelin men.
yeah.
The helmet, the rebreather gear. You look like an astronaut that is going to Mars. It's quite a lot and quite uncomfortable, to be honest.
So another listener question, they actually wanted to know a little bit about the tow plane. I guess it isn't your run of the mill Pawnee, right?
Yeah, so we use one, a couple of years we use, you know, basically a version of a pony, and that worked out well. We were able to break the world record with that and go over 50,000 feet. But the problem is that it takes so long to to climb between 10,000 and the stratospheric wave, which normally starts around 42, 44,000 feet, that going them from 50 something to 90, it will make the flight 10 hours long and very, very, very tiring. So we got the help of a Grop egret, and the Grop egret is just a motor glider basically. It's a big turboprop single engine with 110, 114 feet wingspan that flies very slow, and we created a towing system for that, install it, and it tow us to 40, 45,000 feet, one time to 48,000 feet, which is the highest tow ever in
Yeah.
history, by the way.
Yeah, that's a yeah, that's a big tow. How long does it take to get up to that height usually?
Um, you know, roughly it's 1,000 feet a minute. At the end, it's more like 500 feet a minute, so it could take 45, 50 minutes.
Okay. If you guys got into an emergency up there, do you have the ability to bail out from the capsule, or is there like a whole ship parachute? How does that work?
It, there's a BRS, a ballistic recovery system that will bring the whole airplane down as a capsule, basically.
Oh, wow.
So no, there is no way to bail out. We don't even carry parachutes because it sounds well in theory, but in reality, it will be almost impossible. The Perlan, you have so much gear on top of you. You have this hatch, on top of you,
Right.
and it's not something that you can just get up and go.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's not the same setup as a normal glider.
Yeah. What with the recent flight of a drone copter on Mars, I'm not sure if you've seen that, but have you guys ever thought about the possibility of
Yeah.
flying a drone glider on another planet like Mars?
Yeah, so one of the pitch ideas to NASA and Airbus was the fact that Perlan could fly in Mars. the air density at 90,000 feet is roughly 2% of what it is at sea level, which is identical to Mars. And the temperatures we're flying -70 or so, they're also very similar to Mars. So in theory, if you can fly at 90,000 feet, you could fly Mars and you could, in theory, land in Mars with a glider.
Wow.
So there's been a lot of discussion over the years with them, and recently, I think 2 days ago, I think NASA and Airbus put a tweet, I believe, or a post on Facebook talking about this Perlan flying in Mars as a possibility one day, which is
Nice.
of course nothing nothing for real, but just they were alluding, I think, to the possibility that the Perlan in theory could do that. You know.
Oh, that is very cool. What has it been like working with Jim Payne, and are there notable people on the project team you want to give a shout out to or take a moment to recognize here on the podcast?
Yeah, sure. Working with Jen has been absolutely fantastic. I don't think I learned more from any other pilot or test pilot in my career. So, just the best experience. Yeah, I learned from a lot of the guys in the project. Ed Warnock, the CEO, has been a big engine behind Perlan. Of course, Heinar, it goes without saying, right? This is his project. Morgan Sattercock, he designed most of what goes inside the Perlan. Not only an excellent pilot but incredible engineer. So many people, Dr. Austin, Elizabeth Austin, who does the science for Perlan, Tim Garner, another pilot, that an engineer that flies with us. Perlan is a group of 30, 40 people plus another 30, 40 volunteers that without them it would have been impossible to do it. So the merit is 100% into these people's abilities and dedication.
Yeah, that's a big team to get all that done.
Yeah, it's a big project. I mean, if you talk about taking a glider to 90,000 feet, sounds absolutely like science fiction. And we
Right?
have we have several occasions where we could have kept climbing, but this safety first, expanding the envelope step by step. It's taking longer than if we would have just gone to 90,000 feet. But I want you and your listeners to know that we could have done that in any of the flights. In other words, the maximum altitude for each test flight doesn't have to do with the wave that day. It has to do with the limits we put for the flight, and they've been a step by step instead of. So, in other words, when we went to 76,000 feet that day, the Jim and Tim could have kept climbing and get to 90,000 feet that day.
Wow, but due to safety, they kept it at that altitude.
Well, yeah, we're clearing the envelope, the flatter envelope, the flight dynamics envelope, 5,000 feet at a time. So,
Yeah.
the same thing. The next flight won't be to 90,000 feet. When we get to Argentina, the next step will be 80 or 82,000 feet.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, Miguel, now for the question everybody's wondering about. What is the plan, if any, for 2021 and beyond, and what is in the future cards for the Perlin project, the team, the ship, all that?
Yeah, so Chuck, the team is an all volunteer team, and we get funded through donations. So we're collecting donations for 2021, and we're hoping we're about 70% or so funded. And for 2022, I'm sorry, for 2021, unfortunately, South America is being hit by COVID very, very hard, and Argentina is right in the middle of a wave, and we canceled 2021 due to COVID.
Right.
While we were
Yeah.
pretty confident that United States by July will be pretty close to COVID free, and it looks that way. Certainly is not the case with South America and with Argentina, and hopefully they'll be where we are in a few months, but it will be too late for us because for us to be there in 2021, the gliders would have left in April, and we will be right now almost packing our personal belongings to head down south, and that's not possible. For 2022, we have projects to maybe go to Canada and fly a stratospheric wave there. This is all very in the planning stage, and we would like to go to Argentina as well. If we have enough budget and there's no COVID, that's the plan for 2022.
Okay, and now, Miguel, it's time for our lightning round. This is kind of a fun little thing we do. Question and answer. If there's one of the questions that you want to pass on, you're welcome to pass. If not, you can answer the question, then we'll go on to the next one. What do you think?
Sure. If I can answer the question in less than 10 seconds, I will. If not, I'll pass. Sounds good?
If you have to go a little longer, that's fine.
Okay,
Always interesting to.
I'll give it a try. There's
Okay.
some questions you understand that is hard to do less than 2 or 3 minutes. So that's what I meant.
I gotcha. Yeah,
But I'll give it a
I
shot.
understand. Okay, here we go. What is the heaviest item in your land out or emergency kit?
An axe.
Which extremity gets the coldest for you up there? Is it your hands, your feet, your face, or all of the above?
Definitely your feet.
Front seat or rear seat?
For me, I've been flying on the rear seat. All of the systems on the aircraft get control from the rear, and you need 2 pilots to do this. But I hope to fly on the front. I'll ask Jim about it.
Single scariest moment aboard the Perlan Ship: equipment malfunction, huge turbulence through rotor, sketchy landing conditions, or none of the above?
None of the above. Probably during test flight, one of the test flights, we were doing something called a wind up turn, and it was hard. The loads were so high, it was hard to get it out of. I wouldn't say it was super scary, but it took a lot more muscle than we thought to get the airplane out of the flight condition.
Oh, well. The thing that most has your mind preoccupied on flight day morning. The weather isn't going to cooperate. Jim was eating a lot of breakfast burritos, and you're going to be sitting behind it for 5 hours. or you worry that something isn't just quite right with the glider or the instruments.
Mostly out of those 3, the first one, definitely.
Okay. Outside of the Perlan world, what is your favorite glider to fly for recreation or cross country?
For recreation, I mean, this is very unpopular answer, but I like flying the PW5. I have one, and it's such a tiny ship. Here for Florida, we have tiny thermals, and there's lots of them, but tiny, and the airplane does very well recreational. I love flying wave on the Arcos with Tim or Jim, because it's such a stable, fast, glider. So very responsive.
What is your favorite soaring related book?
I'll pass.
Okay. What's the coolest soaring related video or YouTube you've seen lately?
Well, I don't have one. Somebody just sent me a video of bad landings of the U2. I don't know if you ever seen this. It is hilarious. I saw it probably 15 times. I would say that in the video, which is 3 minutes long and is like a video clip, they arrest the pilot on his pressurized suit, astronaut suit, at the end for being a bad pilot. And I don't know who in the military did this, but Google U2 bad landings or something like that. Somebody sent it to me. Since the U2 is a big glider, I will go with that one.
You were flying around in a place with verdant farmland and gentle rolling hills. You have to land out. Slight uphill with 15 knot tailwind or slight downhill with 15 knot headwind.
Bad choice or bad choice? The problem with the tailwind is that you're not going to have a lot of controls over the elevator. So I guess the second one.
Okay.
But not really. You gave me 2 bad choices. So.
Well, you can thank my co-producer for that one. Emergency, you have 2 options: jump out with a parachute or land in a lake.
Again, 2 bad options, but I would say probably land on the lake. One thing as a test pilot, the very first thing when I get to a new project is I always make them install things that will help me get out of my seat and jump. I just did it with Solar Impulse. and I did it before with Solaris Stratos, and they look at me like, why is this guy won all of these things? Because the getting up and getting your canopy out or whatever you need to do and jumping out of the plane, we all rehearse it how it will be. I just don't know that I'd be capable of doing it or not. I hope I would.
Right.
If part of the, if you lose a wing or something like that, part of or the tail, you're gonna have to do it. But it looks to me like a very complicated maneuver. Landing on a lake could be very fatal if you don't do it right. And for example, in El Calafate, the lake Lago Argentino, the temperature is 34 degrees Fahrenheit. So even if you are able to land there, you're probably going to die within 7-10 minutes, because
Oh
nobody's going
yeah,
to be
just
able to recover you in less time. And so
yeah,
so
it's not
two,
going to take
two,
long.
two bad choices. I don't like the idea as a test pilot of ever jumping out of a flying airplane. So
I know, right? If looking for good lift, would you rather follow a raven, a vulture, or an eagle?
I don't know. Like I told, maybe an eagle.
Okay.
Anything with a good decent wingspan, like I told your listeners in the beginning, I'm fairly only 13 years flying gliders. I don't have that many hours. Here in Florida, it's a great indication. You look for birds. That's what I do on a blue day.
Right. Yeah.
But out of those ones, I don't know which ones will be best.
Bucket hat, cap, bandana, or stocking cap?
None of them.
Okay. 15 meter, 18 meter, or 25 meters?
18.
For more vintage ships, metal gliders or wood?
Metal gliders. I mean, you can't. You have never met anybody that hated an L13 or an L23.
Right.
They just fun to fly, easy.
Vario sound in sync or quiet?
No, I'd rather hear when I'm in sync. It's not as
Yeah.
pleasurable, but
Spoilers on turn to final, open or closed?
for me, they have to be a little open because if you need them, when you need them, you want to make sure they can get out of the lock position. So for me, I will get them maybe 10% out.
Yeah.
More if I need to, but it's better to use them when they're absolutely needed, not before. But they have to be out of the locked position.
Paper checklist or mnemonic?
Paper checklist.
Last time you looked at the compass?
Well, my last fly with Solar Impulse, I had an EMI problem and it was serious, and I used the compass. And I have to admit that somebody else told me, "Oh, I think we're coming due for a compass, Rose check." I'm like, "Oh, I never look at those things anyway." And what do you know? 3 days later, I was looking at the compass because
Right.
I had EMI bad enough where my two Garmin's 3X or G3X, whatever they call, were showing the wrong heading, both of them, big time.
Oh, wow.
40-50 degrees off.
Wow.
It was real bad. It was VFR, so I just looked outside and I knew where I was the whole time, But
Yeah.
but I was looking at the compass, yeah.
Tie down for the night or stuff it in the trailer every time, no matter what?
Well, if you fly from Minden, maybe you put it on the trailer, but I'm not. Depends where you are, I guess.
Yeah. Gatorade or water in summer flights?
Gatorade.
Favorite single instrument in the cockpit?
The altimeter. If you don't have anything else, it's not a bad thing to have.
Yeah,
Airspeed
right.
indicator, I guess, but you can hear the wind.
Yeah,
if
right.
you fly a lot on that glider,
Yeah.
then you catch yourself not looking at the airspeed indicator. But
Tinted canopy or clear?
clear.
Gin and tonic, Corona beer, craft IPA, red wine, white wine, scotch, or iced tea?
Red wine, without a doubt.
Nice. Steak, salmon, fried chicken, or garden salad?
Steak.
Right. Miguel, we were talking a little bit before we started recording this, and you were talking about what you're doing right now as your job as a test pilot. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So I'm flying three different prototypes, and they're all basically gliders, motor gliders. One of them, I can comment, the one in the United States, but the ones in Europe, one is called the Solar Stratos, and the Solar Stratos is a motor glider. It's a tandem seat motor glider, made with with the purpose of flying high into the stratosphere, and it has an L over D of 32 over 1. So far, I mean, the designer claims is 38 over 1, but I haven't seen that. um, and it has solar cells on top, and it weighs, what is it in pounds, about 1,400 pounds, 1,450, something like that.
Oh wow.
Lots of fun to fly. It's extremely low wind loading, about 3.8 pounds per square feet, so about half of what a normal glider is.
Wow.
And I'll be flying that again in about 2 weeks, actually less than 2 weeks. And the other one is the Solar Impulse, which is the aircraft that went around the world with a wingspan of 240 feet,
Wow.
4 engines, electric engines, single seater, single wheel. So you balance it like a glider. And anybody can Google a video of this. Just put Solar Impulse 2, and it's pretty interesting because you fly like a glider. Basically, you have air brakes, and the way I fly it basically is I put the engines on dock, so I stop the engines, and then I just treat it like a glider.
Oh nice.
And when you touch down, you have to balance it. So you got 240 feet of wind, and a single tire that is, oh, I don't know, about 14 inches in height and 8 inches wide.
Wow.
Maybe less, and you have to balance that. And the wind loading is extremely low. It's less than 2 pounds per square feet. Um, so basically, to me, I use my gliding skills to fly these two aircraft, because that's what they are. They're gliders. They're motor
Yeah.
gliders. And even when the motor is running, the atmosphere really does affect you in a big way, because the wind loading is so low, and you have so much wind, then any thermals, any sink really does a number on your flight trajectory. To the point that it becomes very hard to control.
So you're really feeling it, obviously, then.
Oh yeah, you feel it. Yes,
Yeah.
you feel it. You feel it way more than you wish you would. Most of the test flights of both airplanes are done 1, 2, 3 hours before sunrise, and then I land
Oh, interesting.
within an hour or two after sunrise. Yeah, it's to come out to have a calm atmosphere. Last not this last Sunday, but April 18th, I was able to set a world altitude record with Solar Impulse as well.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yep, it was a fun flight, almost 3 hours long.
Is that is it a self launch? How does it take off? Just with the engine?
The Solar Impulse, yeah, is a normal motor glider. You have 4 engines. It's the size of a 747, so this thing is
Yeah.
gigantic, and they run the wind for you. That's the only difference.
Okay.
With so they have the wind is about 14 feet high or so, something like that. So they have these poles, kind of like the U2, and somebody underneath with a scooter runs the wind for you.
Oh, wow.
There's some interesting videos you can see on the internet. And then when you land, they catch you just like a glider,
Okay.
because you don't want to drop the wind.
Right.
So, and then you balance it with your engines to try to, and with the speed forward without touching the brakes, so the wind doesn't drop on you, because this thing is so massively big. On the Solar Stratos, the one in Switzerland, it has a landing gear, a fixed landing gear with two wheels. So it's like a normal tail dragger. So
Okay.
there's no
Yeah.
need for that. You still have to be careful because the wheelbase is, I don't know, 5, 6 feet wide, and the wingspan is something like 90 feet. So obviously it'd be very, very easy to put the wingtip into the ground, even though
Wow.
that you have a proper landing gear, like you can call it.
Wow. Well, sounds like you're having fun.
Yeah, it certainly is better than having a cubicle job.
Yeah, right. Miguel, thank you so much for joining us. Had a lot of fun talking with you, and I know the listeners really enjoyed it. Thanks again for taking your time out. I'm sure we'll be chatting with you again.
Sure, we'd love to tell you about Perlan when we get him ready for 2022, and as soon as COVID allows us, we'll be back doing interesting stuff outside of the United States with it.
Absolutely, and make sure you tell the team, the listeners said hello, and
we'll definitely do.
We're keeping an eye on it, and it's exciting stuff.
Thank you so much, Chuck.
Thank you, Miguel. Author and glider pilot Dale Masters joins us right now for another Soaring Tales with Dale, and this one's titled
Eagle Eyes. The first time I soared with an eagle, it was in a region where eagles are rare, in a blue thermal where I expected nothing. So I decided to just follow along and see what else it could teach me. Several times, this eagle left good lifts sooner than I expected and quickly found more nearby. We meandered across two big mountains to the edge of our local area before I lost my nerve and turned back. I would have liked to log an hour of duel, but that maestro probably didn't hold a current CFI. During those years of soaring only in New England, I read a lot of mumbo about shear lines, but had never experienced one. Turns out shear lines, as we know them in western deserts, are rare there too. And for years, I was just a curious skeptic. Then one late afternoon, I found two osprey, also known as fish eagles, cruising straight up the middle of the valley, maintaining attitude while hardly ever flapping their wings. I followed for miles, curious what was keeping us up. Then a single wispy queue formed directly ahead, and it began to make sense. Cool mountain air was flowing down from both sides of the valley and converging in the middle. A textbook example of katabatic lift. What I have to wonder is, how was that the only time I saw this in 16 years soaring there? How many times did it occur in the open valley unmarked while I was scratching for thermals over the hills? At a different place where eagles are common, we'd observed two fledglings playing together for several weeks. And on a day off, I brought my camera hunting in the mountains. It took longer to catch them than to find them. And I thought that was the fun part until, to my amazement, they widened out and let me ease the 126 in between them. Imagine thermaling to 12,000 feet with an eagle off each wingtip. If their mother were watching, would she have been horrified? And if so, then what? 3 times I've been attacked by eagles after getting too cozy. And in each case, they flew away first, almost out of sight, then home straight back in, nose to nose. One came so close I could see its eyes from the back seat as it passed under. We had a video cam mounted on the forward panel, and I held position as long as I could before pulling up. Of course, the film ran out just before that. Another place, as the only glider pilot at a ride operation in a summer resort, I had the liberty of flying approaches any way I chose. A pair of bald eagles had their nest on the broken top of the polished pine near the airport, a perfect spot to dive from downwind leg, cut a 2G turn around the nest, and pull up into a normal base. Passengers always loved that, and the eagles didn't seem to mind either. Of course, they were gone from the nest most of the day. Oddly, in 2 full seasons there, I never once spotted either of them aloft, which implies their daily range was likely much bigger than mine.
Aerox, #1 in portable and engineered oxygen systems. Your source for FAA-approved oxygen mask and portable oxygen systems. Aerox now introduces the Aerox Pro 2 Plus Flight Bag Portable Oxygen System. Small, lightweight, and simple to use. The Pro 2 Plus is perfect for the occasional user who wants the flexibility to access higher altitudes without worry about flying impaired. Now available at Aerox distributors and at aerox.com. Aerox, engineered for aviators. Welcome back to the podcast. Glad to have you, David.
Chuck, it's always good to be here.
Hey, you are down at the Club Nationals actually right now in Gliderport there in Benton, Tennessee, correct?
That is correct. Beautiful Chilhowie Gliderport.
Awesome. So, tell me a little bit about the event.
Well, this is the Club Class Nationals, and the winner will be the national champion of the club class and eligible to compete in world gliding competitions as the U.S. representative.
Very cool. So how was your practice day?
Yesterday was a practice day. It was overcast. It was overcast all day, and my glider is right next to one of our current national champions, Daniel Sazin, and he was eager to go, and he went up as the first tow on the cloudy day to get some practice, and about 5 minutes later, he was back on the ground. So it was not a great soaring day. However, later in the day, we had a little peak of sunshine for about maybe a half hour, and the contest weatherman said if the sun comes out, the air is unstable enough that we will likely have some good soaring. So I managed to wait until the sun came out and had about an hour's flight before the sky clouded over and shut down again. So that was my practice day.
Oh, nice. Okay. And what are you flying?
I am flying Matt Bates' LS4 1 Romeo, familiar to anybody at the Cumberland Soaring Group.
Yes.
With its lovely fish scale decorative symbols on it.
Yes, right.
Well, I think it's fish scales. We're puzzling over what the decoration is, but I'm sticking with fish scales.
Now, you have some tough competition there, of course. World champion Sarah Arnold, I understand she'll be competing as well.
World champion Sarah Arnold has her lovely LaBelle, and she took a couple tows yesterday on the practice day. So, yes, I think it's a very tough field.
Very nice. Now, can you tell me a little bit about the terrain, the area you're going to be flying in?
Eastern Tennessee is the land of mountains. The Smoky Mountains are maybe 50 miles away, and Chilhowie Mountain rises over 2,000 feet above the glider port just about 2 miles to the east. So it's very strong terrain relief. But down in the valley where the glider port is, it's pretty friendly as far as land out options and so forth. In fact, the glider port itself sits in the middle of a turf farm. It's a grass strip, and all around it is farm turf, but they don't farm the turf on the glider strip. But as you can imagine, it's very landable.
Okay, so the course itself, do you know what the course is yet, or is that something later, or how does that work?
Well, it'll change every day, but they've shared the turn point database, and they'll pick the course from among the established turn points, and they range all over eastern Tennessee, from here up to Knoxville and down over to Chattanooga, and maybe beyond, I guess, depending on the weather. I don't think they task us much to the east, which would be into the mountains, because it's very rugged and not a lot of places to land.
Yeah, the Smokies are rugged for sure.
It's a tough field. A lot of really, really good sticks here. And I'll be happy to get around every day.
Oh, it should be fun. David, thank you so much. It's good to get an update there in Tennessee, and I'll definitely be checking back with you when things wind down to hear how everything went.
Thanks, Chuck. Always good talking to you. Jason's here. You want to talk to him?
Yeah, if we can get some words from him, that'd
let
be
me. He had a space full of barbecue here, so I don't know. But let me check.
Okay.
Hang on. All right, I was successful. Here he is.
Hello, Chuck.
Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I am in Chilhowie, had a wonderful dinner, and now I'm looking at the line of trailers and the beautiful sun starting to set.
Very nice. Sounds like it's going to be an awesome event.
Indeed. You know, but it's a little bit of a slow start, a little bit of rain, things like that, but I don't mind. I'm appreciating the rest.
So what are you going to be flying in?
I am flying in Aero Club Albatross's LS4, Alpha Charlie Alpha. So the club was gracious to lend me the glider, and that's going to be the glider I shall fly.
So can you tell me a little bit about the competition there and how you think that's going to go, the terrain? How do you feel about it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with the terrain, it's it's somewhat, it's certainly along the Appalachians, right? So it's not too different from where I fly or Mifflin Ridge Soaring. They got a beautiful 20-mile long mountain right up here, and and then just like what you normally have with ridge country, is the fields are not great, but they're fairly plentiful around here. And then along the valley, then there's pretty decent thermals. But again, similar to what you would get anywhere along the Appalachians. So, and for like sometimes the weather can be quite good, but then other times it can be low, weak, blue, and scratchy. But that's what it's like flying around here.
Well, it sounds like there's some tough competition down there as well. Not that you're not some tough competition yourself, but
oh no, I if I manage to go and survive the first 2/3 of the contest without landing out, or at least landing out on days that everyone else is on days that where everyone makes it around, then I'll be happy. That's But yeah, we do have a couple of a bunch of really great folks. I mean, the contest pool is not that large, but the characters here are quite good. You have Sarah Arnold and Tom Holland and Mike Westbrook, just to name a few, that are certainly very strong pilots. So it'll be very, very fun flying with them and seeing what they do. Up and coming pilots, like Jacob and Jacob Fairburn and Tony and many more. It's though no disrespect to some of the other names here. Those are just the folks that most easily come to the top of my mind because I know them the most.
Well, it sounds like it should be a fun event, and we will be checking back with you, of course, because I know you have a new blog. So
yeah. Well, I'll be. I'm gonna try to write every day. I mean, Mitch Hudson is doing the formal contest reporting. So he'll be telling you guys about all the what the task was, what the weather was, what kind of the contest reporting. I like to write about my own experiences and the kinds of sorts of highlighting certain elements. So they're kind of I highly encourage you and your readers and listeners rather to also look at Mitch Hudson's reports on the SSA contest because he writes pretty well too. But I'm going to try to write on a daily basis.
Oh, so, very cool. Definitely be looking forward to that.
Yeah. All right. Well that's yeah.
Thanks for checking in with us down at the Nationals.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, and I'm sure there will be lots more interesting stories to come. So stay
absolutely,
tuned.
I'm sure. Take care, Daniel.
All right. See ya.
Thank you for joining us here for another episode of Soaring the Sky. Thank you to our guests who continue to bring us great soaring content for the podcast here. And thank you to our Patreon pilots who continue to financially support the podcast. We do greatly appreciate that. I do want to congratulate Eric Cardin, a previous guest here on the podcast, who now has started his journey soaring across America. Quite an interesting and amazing story. And if you want to hear more about that, you can always jump over to episode 88 for his story. So until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and happy soaring.
If you would like to say hi and let us know where you are enjoying the podcast, we would love to hear from you. If you are a glider pilot and want to share your aviation journey, contact us at chuck@soaringthesky.com or send us a message on our website at soaringthesky.com and Chuck will get in touch with you. We hope you join us next time for another soaring adventure here on Soaring the Sky, a Glider Pilots podcast. Soaring the Sky is written and produced by Chuck Fulton, co-producer Mitch Thompson. Original music for the podcast was written and produced by Kim Spangler. Graphic design for the podcast was created by Zachary Fulton. Voiceover work was done by Michelle Perez.